What's up, everyone? Welcome back to District Baseball. It is a great week. Not only are our beautiful mugs back on YouTube, but the MLB has officially righted their wrongs. They are fixing the uniforms. I guess it wasn't so much MLB as it was Nike, but finally there's no more see-through pants. There's no more mixing of colors, different shades of gray in the road grays. There's no more small lettering on the back. Just the quality is back. We're back. Back on YouTube. It's great. It's a great day. Trey, what's going on?
Nick, I'm also very excited about that jersey change. Got that Jeff Passan notification about
Yeah.
20 minutes ago, and I was very excited to
Yep.
see it. But yeah, no, a really good week of baseball. We're back in our normal setup as well. We were on our weird audio only I was out of town setup last time, but now we are getting back into it with our normal episodes, so I'm pretty excited to get going.
Yeah. Great day. Great times. Great players. Special teams. Special plays. Um, yeah. So it was a busy week in baseball, and we obviously have a lot to cover and not a lot of time today. But the best way to recap everything, or at least get started recapping everything. 3 up, 3 down. Trey, why don't you take it away?
Welcome to 3 Up, 3 Down. This week we had some interesting things go on that I wanted to get into, but we'll go ahead and start with what I think is really interesting, which is another Maddox. Max Fried threw another Maddox. That is the second Maddox in consecutive weeks in Major League Baseball in 2024. Are we serious? Are we seriously doing this? Are we getting pitchers to go 9 innings?
We're in a pandemic after all.
Yeah,
jeez.
For innings, yeah, I agree. But yeah, Max Fried, excellent outing. It was against the Miami Marlins, so it doesn't really count. Technically, yes, it does count, but they're really bad. But good for Max Fried. He's done that like 3 times in his career. It's a thing that he can do when he's really on. So good for him. But if we're talking about, maybe some unfortunate pitching news, we got to go to the D-backs because their rotation has just not been able to get healthy all at the same time. Merrill Kelly has gone out. He's going to go on the injured list. Zach Gallen left early with hamstring tightness in his last start. Hopefully not an IL stint for him. I did not see that they moved him there, so hopefully he won't miss any time. But he had to leave a start early. Eduardo Rodriguez still has not made his season debut. They did debut Jordan Montgomery. I think he's pitched 2 starts for them, and he's pitched pretty well, so that's good, but they really just need to get healthy because their offense has been pretty unbelievable. They have one of the higher run differentials in the league, yet they have a negative record, so they just need to get pitching. Health is kind of their big thing right now, but they should be fine because their offense is rolling. Back to the good stuff, though. Adam Frazier with one of the more ridiculous home run robberies. I feel like we have home run robberies where guys kind of, waltz back to the fence and do like a little hop and they sort of rob it and it's like, whoa, he robbed a homer. But this was a legit home run robbery from a guy who's not an outfielder, from a guy who's a second baseman by nature, getting up and robbing a home run from, I believe it was Parker Meadows, Seth Lugo, getting some help from his defense because his numbers are looking really good. But that's going to help when you don't give up a home run you should have given up. And he turned it into a double play. Good for Adam Frazier on that play. That play was very, very cool. Our second down is, I think it's more on the umpire than anything because Aaron Boone had one of the better ejections, which was honestly awesome. So that's probably a good thing in terms of the entertainment value for us. But it was bad in terms of why it happened because Boone was warned about something. I don't even know what the umpire was mad about. Hunter Wendelstedt was the umpire at the time. And he gave him a warning. Boone said, all right, fine, I'll stop. And then a fan from behind the dugout yelled something at the umpire. And the umpire threw out Aaron Boone and made a huge deal of it and basically told him, I don't care if you didn't say anything. I'm throwing you out anyways. So we had an ump on our power trip. And, that's pretty standard. Bad stuff that happens in baseball pretty often, unfortunately. But, yeah, that guy is an umpire school, by the way, Hunter Wendelstedt. So if you're currently at the Hunter Wendelstedt School for Umpiring, maybe reconsider. And then finally, in the goods, we have a White Sox good. Nick, this is the first all year where we've talked positively about the White Sox. They swept the Rays. They swept them. Andrew Benintendi had a 2-homer game with a walk-off. And our good best friend who I never had any issues with, Eric Fetty. Wow, what a start today. 8 1/3 innings. And he's had back-to-back games with at least 7 Ks, and I think he had like 12 the other day. So good for Eric Fetty. It's still early, so I don't know if this is a thing, but I mean, his splitter is legit nasty, so good for him. Good for the White Sox for finally giving their fans something. I mean, just anything. They've actually, I think the Marlins now have the worst record in baseball, so good for White Sox fans. They are not in last place. And finally, we have our April worst qualified hitter and pitcher of the month for our third down. It's Nick Castellanos and Joe Musgrove. Castellanos, negative 1.1 F4 on the season, a 181, 232, 229 slash line. He's only got 1 homer, and he's a defensive liability. If he's not hitting, then it is a disaster. And right now, it's been a disaster in Philadelphia for him, although everybody else on the Phillies is doing just fine, trust me. Then Joe Musgrove, I actually think he'll probably turn it around. I actually like him to do a little bit better. But he's just given up a lot of homers early to start the season. It's really inflated his numbers. He is at a negative 0.6 F4 currently, but he has thrown the innings, 35 innings pitched. So despite the high ERA, he has managed to give them something, I guess. But hopefully he can take down those home run numbers and get rolling again. But that was 3 up, 3 down.
Yeah, I mean, and those are just kind of the broad strokes. Obviously, there's a ton more that we'll get into here in a little bit. But, anytime you see a Maddox, super cool, especially in today's MLB. Like, the complete game is just a thing of the past. So, even if it wasn't a Maddox, if it was just a complete game, like, those are incredibly rare. It's like you got to really appreciate any time they do happen. It sucks that it was Max Fried, but, putting my bias aside, like, if you're the Braves, getting Max Fried back to that level that everyone had expected, called for, hyped up for years, and obviously injuries got a hold of Max Fried, so that sucks for him. But, with the loss of Spencer Strider, getting Max Fried back to that form is huge. I mean, obviously. So it remains to be seen what they'll need to do at the deadline. The Braves will always do something. They're not shy, especially in recent years, of making that move. Sure. But if Max Fried is going to be what we all know Max Fried to be, then that kind of lessens the need for pitching in particular. But they have some guys in their lineup with slow starts, Matt Olson in particular. So we'll
and
see how.
And they're still top of the National League, so.
Right, exactly. So we'll see if there's even a need for anything and who turns it around and whatnot. And that kind of takes me to my next point with the Diamondbacks in particular, just because I was really, really bullish on them. Obviously, a great year last year, but just reinforcing that with trades and free agent acquisitions. And even when they had made the free agent acquisitions, they still signed Jordan Montgomery. Like, they didn't need him, right? But they were like, why not? When in Rome, So I was really bullish on them. Yeah, exactly. I was really bullish on them, so it sucks to see, Merrill Kelly, IL stint, Eduardo Rodriguez still isn't back yet. Jordan Montgomery, that certainly helps. Now that kind of luxury move, so to speak, is becoming incredibly valuable. So that just goes to show if you're proactive in your efforts, it turns out pretty good in the long run. So hopefully they get healthy. But speaking of slow starts, Corbin Carroll's off to a really, really slow start.
Yeah, that's definitely not helping.
Really, really slow start to the point where I think he'll be fine. But
it's going to hurt his overall numbers for the end of the
year.
Right,
and yeah, I think it's not quite the All-Star break. It might just been August of last year. Like, if you compile those numbers, so the last 2 months of the season of 2023 with kind of the first month of this season, it ain't pretty. Yeah. It ain't pretty. So that's tough. He's young. I think he'll bounce back. I saw people picking on my wagon brother, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for, a similar stance. So I hope all these young guys figure it out. But yeah, that's a tough one. And the last one I'll talk about is Nick Castellanos. Listen, we all knew he's a defensive liability, but like the way the Phillies are constructed, he's not even really being put in the best position, in my opinion. Like, he's just clearly a DH. If he was a
for
DH
sure.
only, like I think it would just be better. I think it's mentally taxing when you know you're just a shit defender and you're asked to go out and play a really tough position every single
Yeah.
day, you
And then you
know?
get in a slump on
Right, and then you
offense.
get in a slump and you're just like, I suck on defense, now I suck on offense. Like, why am I even here? Not to mention, they were actively shopping him in the offseason. So it's like, and they had no takers, and not surprising because of that contract, but it's like,
Hmm.
all right, I suck on offense, I suck on defense, and my team doesn't really want me. You know, like, it's a really tough spot to be in. And ultimately, like, these guys are being paid tens of millions of dollars. Like, I'm not going to lose sleep over their slumps. But at the same time, I sort of get it.
Hmm.
So he's an interesting name to watch. Like if there's a salary dump situation, and
Yeah,
the
I
the
could.
Phillies
Yeah.
want to, it's a very interesting. Like I could see Castellanos going to the White Sox or some shit like that,
Yeah.
and as a salary dump thing. Not that the White Sox would have to give up anything in return, but we saw the White Sox take on 7 players from the Braves 40-man roster just cause. Right, just like they
That
weren't
trade
really
was so
getting anything
funny.
just cause. So that's an interesting one to watch, but certainly not the start Castellanos would have wanted, for sure. But speaking of starts that you would have wanted, the Seattle
The
Mariners are
Seattle
rolling.
Mariners.
They are rolling. Moose's Mariners are
Yep.
rolling. Listen, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse. We're going to talk plenty about the Mariners over the course of the year, so I'm not trying to, fire everything off right at the start. I am so hyped about the Mariners. Fingers crossed, though, because, like, the injury bug is coming hard for everyone.
Yeah.
It is. It sucks. Like, it really sucks. It won't stop. It keeps coming and affecting basically all the teams, and the Mariners staff, again, fingers crossed, is healthy right now. But it's really cool to see. It's really cool to see what a well-constructed rotation, and they're not the only ones, but a well-constructed rotation can do when they're fully healthy and fully rolling all at the same time. And that's kind of what the Mariners staff is doing right now. I mean, they're as close to the rotation of aces, to borrow that 2015 Mets thing, as like any team in baseball. Like every single one of their guys could be like the 1B, if not the 1A, on most other teams right now, especially with the injury status around the league. It's awesome to see. So that's a team I really want to be aggressive at the deadline, because their offense is what really needs to get better, right? I think it's fine now, but we're a month into the season. Pitching's always ahead of hitting, right? Hitting tends to pick up May, June, especially in July, once pitching starts breaking down a little bit. Guys getting injured, it starts getting hot, fatigue sets in, dehydration sets in, right? All these things. So that's when it kind of starts to level out, if not swing in the favor of hitters. So right now, yeah, it's cool to see them rolling, but what are you going to do to help that pitching staff really maintain their success and not have to, shoulder the entire burden of winning games?
Yeah, and their offense has finally started to click a little bit because they had a really,
Yeah, it's
really
been
bad
better.
start. Honestly,
Yeah.
they kind of flip flopped what they were doing. They weren't pitching that great at the beginning of the season, and they also weren't hitting that great, so they got off to a rough one. But they've been excellent over the past couple weeks, and it has to do, one with the big dumper. I talked about him last week, but he's hitting
Love
homers.
big jumper.
And if,
Yeah.
if he's hitting homers, he's unbelievable defensively. So that's really all you're asking for. And then Julio Rodriguez, over the past 15 games, is hitting 345, 377, 431. So the power's
He
not
got off to
quite.
a really slow start too.
Yeah, and he did last year as well. So that's something to monitor for the future. Maybe April J-Rod is a little rough, but he hit his first homer the other night. He's getting back to his game, and that power is going to come. The entire league is down offensively right now, which is generally standard for April. But like,
yeah.
so yeah, things are going to start heating up as the weather does. So will the bats, I would assume. And Mariners, again, they don't have to have the most ridiculous offense. They just need to put up enough runs, and they have done that. Let me read you some of the Mariners' scores.
Oh, please enlighten me.
Recently, because their pitching staff I mean, we're not overhyping. Listen to some of the totals here we've got. So since they left their series with the Cubs, they've allowed 3 runs, 1 run, 1, 0, 2, 2, 0, 1, 3, 5, and that's the most. 5 is the most. That was against the Texas Rangers. That was one of their rare losses recently. 1, 1, 3. So they are just not allowing. They only allowed more than 3 runs in like one game in the past 2 weeks, which is just, that's their whole pitching staff. It's not just their starters. Their bullpen is unreal too. So yeah, it's just going to come down to, can they hit just enough? I think that they can, and they're starting to heat up now.
Yeah, I'm hoping their offense finds something. Like it's fine right now. They're heating up, but like, is this an offense that can perform in October? I don't think so. I really don't. So they have pieces for sure, but I don't think, over the course of 162, and especially when, it really counts, this is the offense. Like we saw the Rangers really do that. The Rangers had just enough pitching and the offense carried them. Right. And for the most part, you kind of see that from all of the recent World Series winners. It's like the offense carries them and their pitching does just enough. Offense carries them, pitching does just enough. So, their pitching is really good, but it's different pitching in October after 180 to 200 innings of workload, and then conversely, it's different hitting in the early part of the season versus after 500 to 700 at bats. Mm-hmm. So it's just this is a really inexperienced team, is kind of what I'm saying. Right, even the kind of veterans on the team, they don't have a lot of postseason experience, and they certainly don't have a lot of World Series experience. I don't know if, off the top of my head, if anyone on their 26-man roster has played in a World Series or a championship series. Like, this is not a team that has been there, done that, and it doesn't have to be, the most experienced team ever. Like we saw the Rangers basically get in for the first time in a decade and then win the World Series. But at the same time, they had Bruce Bochy, right, who has been there, done that
Corey
several
Seager
times over.
And all those guys.
Right,
have already been
right,
there.
and Corey Seager, right, exactly. So it's just finding that mix. Like for the Nationals, obviously, everyone knows we're Nationals fans. Like Howie Kendrick and the veterans that have been battle tested over many years, like can kind of steady the ship when the lights may get a little too bright for the newcomers, so to speak.
Yeah, I'd love to see them make a trade maybe for a veteran bat. And they love to trade. So
yeah, they do. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, who's a bad team right now that has good players that might look to sell at the deadline.
Well, when you're talking about the Phillies and Castellanos earlier, I almost brought up Luis Robert as
that's not
because that's not really a Mariners trade. That's more of a Phillies trade because they like to go big, and But yeah, I mean it's still a little too early in the season to determine who's going to be selling, but within the next month or so, we're going to find out who they should be targeting, because they definitely need a veteran bat for that offense. I think that they just need one veteran bat that can provide some good leadership and some good power for them, because that pitching staff really doesn't need a whole lot of help.
No, their pitching is fine. So it's like if you're all locked and ready to go with one area, this being pitching, go help the other area, and let's see if it just right place, right time kind of thing. But speaking of a team that also got off to a slow start and is now really starting to pick it up, the Los Angeles Dodgers, to no one's surprise, are now playing like the Los Angeles Dodgers. They're just very, 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 very good. The Nationals beat them in a series 2 weeks ago, and I guess that woke them up, and they came into DC and absolutely blew the doors off them. As
I was
one would expect.
Yeah, I happened to be there, by the way.
I was at one of the games too.
Yeah, so I was at the 20-hit game. The Dodgers.
No way, so was I.
Really? Oh man, we should. Yeah,
but I ended up going really, really last minute though, because I
had planned it we got there pretty early, but it was it was nuts. It was like
I walked into the stadium and we were down like 4-0 already.
Yeah, so, no, it was
4-1 or whatever it was.
Yeah, no, it was a bad start. It was a bad middle. It was a bad finish for the Nats. But for the Dodgers, it was very, very good. They had, I think, every player on the team had a hit, if I'm not mistaken. I know Shohei and Will Smith both had 3-hit games. They're Mookie, Ohtani, and Will Smith. Freeman's doing fine as well, but it's not like Freddie Freeman eye-popping numbers, so we'll get to him eventually when he's doing that. But Will Smith has been that third guy so far. And their big issue before this week was the bottom of their order, which had been very, very bad. And it still is kind of a concern, but Andy Pages has really come along. He's a prospect they called up, and he's starting to find his power stroke at the bottom of that order in that 8-hole, and that's a big deal. If they can get some depth in that order from him, and maybe some of their other guys like Kike Hernandez figuring it out, or maybe a trade happens, or they sign a minor league free agent and or get a guy back like Jason Hayward. There's a lot of different ways the Dodgers can get a depth guy to work in that bottom of the order. But yeah, the top, Mookie and Shohei, are, I think they were flip-flopping the batting average leader for a couple games there. They're both around a 200 WRC plus, so not bad.
Not bad at all.
Yeah, and so they went 5-1 this week. Finally got slowed down today by the Blue Jays and Kevin Gausman, who actually had a good start finally. Good for him, because he also started in a little bit of a slump.
Really glad I pivoted from Gausman to Kirby for my Cy Young pick.
Yes, well, Kirby was great yesterday, too. We didn't even talk about him. He had 12 strikeouts last night for the Mariners. We're always coming back to the Mariners. But yeah, the Dodgers offense looks pretty good. They'll probably add someone via trade and make it even more ridiculous. But yeah, if they can just keep that bottom of the order producing, then they're not going to have any problems anymore.
Yeah, and there's one thing you can count on the Dodgers. Like, people associate them with, like, the 2000s Yankees, and I get why they would jump there, but, like, the Dodgers are where they make their hay is trades. And, I mean, also, like, their homegrown talent.
Yeah, their player development is excellent as well.
Yeah, there was a chart going around, I think it was sometime last year. Obviously, the Dodgers have always been regular season champions, so to speak. But, like, the percentage of players that came from free agency versus trades and, like, just player development is way, way lower. It might be a little bit more skewed now because they let guys like Corey Seager go and, made some trades, especially in the rotation. So it might be a little bit different now. But they're just well-rounded. They can beat you in any way, whether it's free agency, trades, or just player development. So that's just to say, like, they're going to figure out the bottom of the lineup, and it sort of seems like they're already starting to do that now, like you mentioned with Andy Pages, homegrown talent. So it's just the Dodgers going to be the Dodgers. We always expected them to be in October, regardless of how they got there and how it looked at the start. We knew they were going to be there. So this isn't really news, but it is news just because we talked about how slow of a start they had. So the Dodgers are going to Dodger. We'll see what happens when it actually matters.
The Dodgers are indeed Dodgering.
Yeah, exactly. Dodgers going to Dodger. All right, moving on to, honestly, what was my, big story of the week in some respect. So Jackson Holliday, obviously number one prospect, absolutely tore up the minor leagues, every single level. Finally got promoted a couple weeks ago and could not have had a worse time in the majors. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. It's really not awful. And I it sucks to see because everyone wants their top prospect to come up and just light the world on fire. And if there was anyone who could have done it, it seemed like Jackson Holliday. Of all of the, hyped prospects, no one had the ascension through the minor leagues that Jackson Holliday did. I mean, people were flabbergasted when he didn't make the opening day roster. And rightfully so. Rightfully so. It made no sense at all. The Orioles were trotting out Tony Kemp, right? And, no disrespect to A's Hall of Famer Tony Kemp,
my
but
goat.
just saying, that's a team that won like 110 games or whatever it was last year. Like, they could use the number one prospect in baseball manning second base for them every single day, especially the way he was hitting. Finally comes up and absolutely sucks. So now they're faced with a tough decision. It's like, do we let him ride it out, or do we try to get things right? And they opted for the latter and demoted him. And obviously that's a tough look. All the Twitter, social media, trolls, whatever, had a field day with it. Again, I completely understand. But it's an I won't say awkward, but it's a unique spot for the Orioles because they are obviously a team that is built in large part, basically entirely on their farm system. Jackson Holliday being the spearhead of that, the tip of the spear. But like, sorry, I'm watching the Caps game. If you see me looking up, they just scored. Very excited. But yeah, it's just a unique position because, he tore up AAA, so maybe it's just mental, right? But like, as far as what he has to prove, he has to prove it at the major league level, not the AAA level. So it's going to be a unique kind of balancing act to see when they decide to actually call him back up. And he's not the only one. They have I'm going to completely butcher his name, Heston Kjerstad.
Kjerstad, you were close.
Kjerstad. There's like a silent J in there. I don't know.
Yes.
But anyways, they called him up and he's like not even playing. So it's weird that you have all these top prospects, but also just a really good team to begin with, and then you're gonna call them up to not play every day, but like you also don't want to stunt their development, so you have to send them back down to AAA. That's kind of the problem the Orioles are facing. It's kind of a good problem to have, but how they manage it is going to really, I'm not breaking any news here, but like it's going to be really important, and it might really impact how their season goes if they mismanage it in any way. And conversely, we could see a trade just because there's too many like top prospects to balance and manage and really pay too close attention to, where they just need guys that can plug and play and go, if that makes sense.
I think two things are true. I think one, he was ready by the numbers. When you look at the stats, there was nothing that he was doing in AAA where you're like, he needs to stay there. Like, he needs to prove it. And two,
right,
he also wasn't ready this time. So it's like, it's kind of that balancing act. Like, I think that he probably should have made the team, and that they also are correct in sending him down this time because he just hasn't done anything. And he's really struggled with the velocity and spin high in the zone. Cutters specifically, he was not very good against cutters. He wasn't really good against anything when he was up because he only had like 2 hits. But yeah, no, it's kind of weird. I think it is more of that mental thing, the mental hurdle of, wow, I'm a big leaguer, and he's like 19 still. So I mean, it's tough. Not everyone's Juan Soto. Not everyone walks in with this crazy mindset of I'm as good as these guys. Sometimes it can be intimidating. So I think that in the end he'll be just fine. It's just he goes back down, gets that mental reset. It has impacted what the Orioles will do. I think if he had come up and immediately started performing and locked in as that starting spot for the rest of the year, it was more likely that they would have traded. But now that he kind of hasn't, they might be a little bit more like, maybe we should hold off on trading these guys because you never know, who's good, who's bad, or whatever. They also have Kobe Mayo as well. I mean, they have an embarrassment of riches. Colton Cowser's already in the big leagues playing great. So they're in that position where they don't have to rush him if he's not playing well. But he was playing well. It's weird. It's definitely a weird situation. Weird. I mean, I expected him to fully break out of that slump within a week and be fine, but it just didn't happen. And when you're a team like the Orioles who's in a position where they're trying to win now, you can't really have that on your team, just that black hole, just because he's a prospect and he's supposed to be good. You got to go with who's performing at that time, especially when you're in a dogfight with the Yankees.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Like, you're in a dogfight with the Yankees. You've, with or without Jackson Holliday, you're leading the AL in runs scored. So it's like you got to do what's best for the prospect, but you need to win, right? The window is firmly open. You need to win. All right, so you got to make those tough decisions sometimes. But you brought up a great point in Colton Cowser. Colton Cowser came up last year and absolutely sucked. Like, he was awful last year. no two ways about it. And now this year, he's like their best player, arguably. Like, he is
which
unreal
is
right now.
Kind of our point about Holiday. It's like he's probably going to be fine. And that's why you mentioned, I mentioned. I think it's definitely more that mental leap of just becoming a big leaguer every day and not being starstruck. A lot of guys mention that they're like kind of when they come up, they're starstruck, like, oh my god, I've been watching this guy for so long. But you have to like kind of get rid of that mindset and be like, I'm an equal with these guys, and so it can be hard to do. I'm assuming, I've never done it, but I'm assuming it can be pretty tough to get over that hurdle.
Bloomer.
So
Late bloomer.
Yeah. One day I'll be like Dennis Quaid in The Rookie at age 38 or whatever. But yeah, no, Kowser wasn't great last year, and he's come up. So like you said, it's a good problem to have these guys struggle now because they're still able to win even without them. And then, if they can overcome those struggles, you just add another great player. So the Orioles are very scary in terms of their entire organizational depth.
Yep. All right, moving on to our final topic of the show. And it's not necessarily like the biggest news, but we wanted to highlight kind of a more under the radar thing that I think diehard MLB fans will have already known, but we wanted to point out Jordan Hicks is a legitimate starter at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Giants don't get enough credit for what they're able to do with pitchers. We've seen a lot of pitchers who we thought their careers were kind of over or back end go there, and they may not be like Cy Young contenders, but they end up being really, really solid and serviceable. Then you look at someone like Kevin Gausman, whose career was basically over, had one last chance in San Francisco, becomes a Cy Young contender, and basically works his way to a $100 million plus contract. Logan Webb, Cy Young contender. They added Blake Snell, but I would expect with more time, and obviously Snell's on the injured list right now, that relationship, that marriage is going to be fruitful as well. But Jordan Hicks is a guy the Cardinals tried to make a starter, make a closer. The stuff was absolutely nuts. Always has been, always will be, but they just couldn't get it to all come together. Trade to the Blue Jays. Blue Jays couldn't get it to come together. And the Blue Jays have had a pretty good pitching staff in the past couple of years too. But the Giants, man, they just have the secret sauce. Like, if your pitching career is at the end of its rope, you go to the Giants and you just find something. Like, I just don't understand how or why or what they're doing, but it works. And Jordan Hicks is like almost must-watch TV right now.
Well, I've got some data for you, Nick, that can maybe point to a reason why that's going on. The Giants love the sinker splitter combo, and that has been they've been ahead of the game on that because Webb throws a changeup, but like it moves like a splitter. Jordan Hicks has raised his splitter percentage from like 1.6% to now 14%. That's become a huge weapon for him. Alex Cobb, not Wood. Alex Cobb. He's not. He's currently on the injured list, but he's been a sinker splitter guy that's really seen a resurgence in San Francisco. So they've been ahead of the game on that. Jordan Hicks, 34 innings pitched. That is more than half of what he pitched last year as a reliever. So you're getting way more value in terms of the innings pitched. But then you go ahead and he's got a 1.59 ERA in those innings. He's got a 60% ground ball rate, and I think that some of that ground ball rate is sustainable with him because of that splitter sinker combo. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that he's going to stick with a 1.59 ERA all year, but like I could definitely see him, 150.
Be kind of cool if he did.
Be kind of I gotta agree. 150 innings, maybe a 3. That would be awesome. And it also kind of brings in a little bit of a discussion like, do you see another team trying to do this with a guy who has this crazy stuff, but maybe, you don't have to throw 102 on every pitch. And Jordan Hicks is showing that. He has decreased his velocity on purpose to be, he's still an above average velocity. Throws like 96 on average, but he used to throw like 102 on average. But he doesn't need all that. He's getting a lot more outs by actually getting players to put the ball in play on his sinker, because he used to basically just get foul balls or swings and misses. Now he's actually getting ground balls as well. So that sinker splitter combo is lethal with Jordan Hicks, and if he can stay healthy and give some innings, I would not be surprised if you might see another team try this with a reliever who has crazy stuff like that, but maybe doesn't need to be throwing max effort on every pitch.
Yep, take a little bit off so you can throw strikes and absolutely dominate. It's awesome.
Oh yeah, and his sinker, because he's lost some velocity, it has gained movement.
It's moving.
So it's moving way more than it ever has, which makes it harder to barrel up. So that's just something. It's something to consider for other teams.
It sounds backwards, but you can literally throw through the break if you're good enough. Like, you don't see it a lot because a lot of guys just don't naturally have 103 in the arsenal.
Yeah.
But you can literally throw through the break. So yeah, taking some off of it is actually helping its movement. Getting more ground balls, more sustainability, more consistency. It's really awesome to see. I love these kind of comeback stories, for especially the tantalizing talent that Jordan Hicks has. So,
and teams got to
really
find
cool
a way to get
see.
innings, because right now injury, like we've been saying for the past couple weeks, injuries for pitchers are not good right now. So you got to find innings somewhere. So they took a reliever and said, you're going to be a starter, and they're doing something. They got something working with that sinker splitter combo, like, because it's not just Hicks, it's like their whole pitching staff. Keaton Wynn as well has and the sweeper as well, but they're definitely more on the splitter in San Francisco.
Yep. Yeah, but it's really Jordan Hicks and Trevor Williams leading that charge. Just absolutely just lights out performers.
Absolutely.
Relievers turn starters. Yeah. All right, so that does it for this episode. We'll be back next week covering more MLB topics, all the burning questions. We will officially be in May, so we'll have a full month under our belts and of data that we can analyze. But in the meantime, be sure to follow us on Twitter at DistrictBSB, on TikTok at District Baseball, and YouTube at District Baseball as well, posting stuff all throughout the week, not just the episodes. We fully appreciate your support. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. You can follow Trey on Twitter at Reverse2R2S, myself at the Coach Moose. And in the meantime, let's go baseball.